Hey guys, Nathan from Harrison Audio here, and in this video, we're going to look at 10 tips for Mixbus 10 Pro. Now, this tip is all about getting a console-inspired workflow, just like the console I have here right behind me. So what this means is you have a console on your screen with very few options, and this also allows you to have less decision-making in the mixing and production process. So when you need to reach for an EQ, guess what? You already have an EQ right there on your screen. When you need to compress something, it's already there. When you need to incorporate a gate, maybe on your drums or a noisy track, you already have one on every single track in Mixbus. And also already built in are 12 mix buses that you can utilize to send your individual tracks to the mix buses for further processing, or just an easier way to group all your tracks in one session. And on these mix buses is a tone control with a high pass filter. You get a built-in drive section, which is very similar to your tape saturation. You have a matrix mix on the first 8 buses that you can then use to send those buses to the last 4 buses for additional processing like delays and reverbs. We have a built-in compressor section, and we also have a spill button on the bottom of each mix bus that only shows what's being sent to that bus. So for example, on Mixbus 1, I have my drums. On Mixbus 2, I have my bass. Mixbus 3 is my electric guitars. Mixbus 4 is my acoustic instruments. Mixbus 5 is a piano. Mixbus 7 is my background vocals, and Mixbus 8 are my vocals. So you can easily take a very large session and break it down to just 8 core buses that really you can process everything with, and then sprinkle in a little bit of delay and reverb on the last 4 buses. On the master bus, we also have features like a master bus compressor. We have a built-in limiter. We have a K14 meter, which allows you to get the optimal volume for your mix. There's a stereo correlation meter, a drive section, and a 3-knob tone control for that final polish on your mix. So Mixbus has always been known for the console style workflow, and that's why I love Mixbus. And if you're wanting to try out something other than your current DAW, then I definitely suggest giving Mixbus a try. In this next tip, we're going to look at the SSL EQ and how it compares and contrasts to the Harrison 32C EQ. So looking at this acoustic track, we can see there's a SSL EQ on the channel strip, and you can also switch between the Harrison 32C EQ. So the Harrison 32C EQ has a high and low pass filter and 4 separate bands, and it's known for its proportional EQ design. As you boost the gain, the Q gets tighter, and as you lower the gain, the Q gets wider. The SSL 9000J has a low and high pass filter as well, with a 4-band EQ, but the middle 2 bands actually has a variable Q knob that goes from very, very wide to very, very tight. And we can see on the screen here that the SSL EQ can go a little bit tighter than the Harrison 32C EQ, but it can also go a lot wider than the 32C EQ. So the SSL EQ is known for transparency and a more surgical option when you need that for your tracks. So let's go ahead and listen to this acoustic guitar and hear what the differences are. So starting with the 32C EQ, let's go ahead and cut all the way down to 13 dB on this mid frequency, and let's just hear what it sounds like. Okay, let's go ahead and boost. So you can hear there's a very wide sweep of sound that we can cut out or boost. But sometimes just a gentle boost is all you need. Okay, let's go ahead and test out the SSL EQ. So on this one, I have the same frequency set to 1.4. We can keep it at the tight Q for now, and then we can adjust the Q to a little bit wider. And the gain can be boost or cut by negative 20 dB. Widened out right there. Sounds good. So once again, in this case, just a general boost works for this track, but you can tell there's a really wide or narrow booster cut that you can get with the SSL EQ. In this tip, let's make a binaural headphone mix with Dolby Atmos in Mixbus 10 Pro. Let's say you're in a session and you just got done making a stereo mix of your song, but now you want to make a Dolby Atmos mix that you can now send off to your streaming service, but you really don't have 12 speakers to work with, all you have is headphones. Well, it's really easy to make a binaural mix here in Mixbus 10 Pro. So first of all, we need to engage Dolby Atmos in our session, and that is done by clicking on Session and then turning on Immersive Panning. Okay, first thing that we notice is the master bus is now muted because we are actually listening to the binaural output with our headphones. And since we don't have a speaker out with 12 speakers, we really don't have to mess with the speaker out mute, but we can just go ahead and mute that just for fun anyways. Okay, we can also check by going to our audio connections how this binaural output is being assigned. So here's our immersive out, and here's our hardware, and we can see that the binaural is automatically assigned to monitor left and right. So now in this session, I already have my individual tracks going to my buses. So maybe my drums, which is on Mixbus 1, can be up front. The bass can also be up front, but more in the middle. And Mixbus 3 is my electric guitars. I want those to be kind of on the side of me in my headphones. Mixbus 4 could also kind of be on the side, but maybe they can be a little bit higher directionally. Mixbus 5 is my piano. I kind of want that in the back, but also a little bit higher as well. Mixbus 8 is my vocal. I want that to be nice and up front. And my background vocals can also be more on the side, and maybe just a little bit higher. The same goes for my reverb. Maybe the reverb sounds really good more in the back of the room. And now we can just play our mix and listen with headphones to our binaural output to hear how it sounds.
Sunrise stripping down the darkness, street lights blinking off as we pass.
And now to make your final level adjustment, you can always go to the trim knob. So really on the louder part of your song, you want the LUFS to hit the -21 range. This is going to be the optimum level for your ADM file when you send it to your distribution through DistroKid or any other service that you may want to use. Also, something new in version 10 is pre and post fader sends. What this is great for is sending a dry, unaffected signal from your track to a mix bus. So that way you can do parallel processing like compression, you can use reverbs, or any other kind of processing that you want. So let me show you how you do it. First of all, go down to the channel switcher and click on sends. And now you can right click and make any of the mix buses pre-fader. So for example, on my snare drum, I may want to send a pre-fader signal to mix bus number 9 to do some parallel compression, some parallel EQ, and also add a reverb. So now I can right click on mix bus number 9, choose pre-fader, do Shift B to show my buses. And now on mix bus number 9, I can do some high pass filtering, maybe add some highs, maybe boost some mids. And I can also add in a reverb. So I have all the drums going to mix bus number 1, but I just have the snare going to mix bus number 9 for some extra processing that's unaffected by my fader level. So now you can hear I can blend in the sound of Mixbus 9 to my original drums and get a totally different snare sound than I had before. Here's a tip on copying region gain from one section to another. So check this out. So if I go here on a vocal and I make a selection, hit the D key, and maybe draw a little region gain to reduce this section. If I like that level, I can actually press E, select the nodes, press Command C for copy, then maybe go over to this section here. Then based on my mouse placement, I can hit paste, and it copies the exact same level to another part of my region, which is really cool. So now I can go in and do the same thing here. Maybe I want to add it to this section and add it to this section. So this gives me a consistent way of copying a certain level of processing from one section to the next. Another really cool feature that's been added in Mixbus version 10 Pro is the ability to draw in your gain automation. And this can apply to region gain or also just automation of faders or trims or panning. So for example, hitting the D key, this puts me into draw mode, and I can now just draw in my automation line. But notice this gave me guard points at the start and the end of where I drew, so that way it doesn't affect any automation to the left or to the right of where I drew in the automation. And just like the last tip, I can easily copy this, hit copy, and then paste it over here on a different part of the region gain. I can also hit A, and maybe I want to do this for fader automation. So now I can just select the fader automation lane instead of the track header, and now hit the same paste, and it pastes it there. I can paste it over here. So really just depending on whether you select the track header or your automation lane, you can easily copy and paste your region gain or automation lane and know that there's guard points in place to not mess up what you've done to the left or to the right. Okay, looking up here on the top, we have a new option for ruler selections. So you can always right click and adjust how many rulers you see. So maybe you don't want to see your time signature or your tempo, but by default, you should always see your range markers, your location markers, and your arrangement markers. And now when you right click, we have a new option that allows you to add a location marker, arrangement marker, CD marker, or cue marker. And this will show up in the appropriate lane. So let's go ahead and add a few markers here. So you can see so far that I have a location marker and a cue marker on the same location marker lane, but I can also right click and I can filter what is being shown. So maybe I only want to show cue markers at a certain time. The same goes for my ranges. If I make a loop range, so you can see I have the loop on the range markers area. But now let's also make a punch range. I can also right click and I can filter out the ranges I actually want to see. So maybe in this case, I only want to see my punch range. So that takes away the loop range. And then vice versa. If I want to only show the loop range, there's that, and it takes away the punch range. So that's an easy way to kind of filter out the markers that you see across your timeline without having too many ruler bars open at once. Now for this next tip, if you're in a session that you seem to be using the same type of track over and over and over, maybe you're recording a vocal across multiple different sessions, and you want the same input, the same color, the same track assignment, the same plugin assignments, you can easily do this with a track template. So let me show you how to do that. So first of all, let's go to track, and then we're going to add a track bus or VCA. So new audio track, we will name this vocal. And let's just go ahead and add one for now. This will be mono. So we have our new vocal track. Maybe we want to record arm this track already. And let's go ahead and add in a plugin. And this can be our vocal flow, for example. And now let's say we want a certain kind of EQ, and we want a certain kind of compression level. And you can go in and adjust anything about the de-essing. And maybe you want to add some reverb. Okay. So now that we have our settings in place, we also want to make sure that our input is selected correctly. So maybe I always use my input number 1 on my interface for my vocal. So we can go ahead and assign that there. you can see that my vocals coming in and out. Now, going over to the mix page, I can right click on the track name. You see that we have save as template as an option. So I can just click on that. I can name this vocal. I can say this is always input 1 with a vocal flow plugin. Then just hit save. And now when I go back to my track dialog to add a track, I can see that my vocal is right there ready to go. I can select it. I can add and close. And now there's my vocal with the same plugin, the same settings as before, and everything is ready to go to have another vocal. So once again, this is great for doing multiple sessions and saves you a lot of time when creating your tracks. Another really cool tip in Mixbus 10 Pro is you can drag and drop plugin settings from one track to another. So let me show you how to do it. So on this vocal flow plugin, for example, I like a certain de-esser, I like a certain level on my compressor, but now I want to copy those settings over from one track to the next. So all I have to do is left click with my mouse on the plugin, slide it over till you see this icon, and then release. And now both plugins have the exact same processing. I can do the same thing with my built-in EQ from one track to another. Just drag and drop. And also do the same thing with my compressor. So notice now that the thresholds are all the same and I have the exact same settings. A great time saver when you're working with drums in the studio is to use the optimize polarity option in Mixbus. And what can happen is your kick drum can be out of phase with your overheads, or maybe you have two snare mics, a top and a bottom that might be out of phase. So this is a very quick and easy way to check the polarity of your drums in your session so you can get the maximum amount of punch and clarity in your mix. So here in my session, I want to choose an area of drums where I'm hitting, a lot of cymbals, a lot of toms. So I'm getting all the hits in there. So all you have to do is just use your range tool and select the range across all your drums. And then we can right click and choose optimize polarity. So after the analysis is done, we can see we have a lot of options to choose from, and we can actually get another 3 dB of volume back just by choosing these options. And also, if we look at the bottom of our channel strip on the mixer, we can see, depending on which one we choose, it will automatically invert the phase of those tracks. Okay, so let's start with the old, and then we'll go through the new options. So you can hear that the second option gives us 3.11 dB of extra gain, and it really corrects the overhead phasiness that we had before. And it's just a really great option to have in your session. So if you haven't tried it out yet, go to a session with drums and see how much punchier you can get your drum sound.